Everybody, thanks for watching. And just a quick reminder that Greek Mythology Volume 4 is now available, as well as the powers that came to be in 2022. I want to thank you guys who took advantage of that and supported. I also want to give a shout out to Taylor and her students over at UNLV for doing a presentation on my work and research. I really appreciate that from you guys. And yeah, let's get into this video. Talked about Greek mythology. Been harping on that lately a lot because it's really important. Greek mythology and the Greeks and everything pertaining to them. And we got to really get into the ancient Egyptians a lot more and that connection. So, of course, we know what happened with the ancient Egyptians as far as them being conquered by the Persians and then the Greeks. But as I get into in the last couple of videos is this understanding that the ancient Egyptians had. Now, one of the things people have to realize and understand that most of the things we get pertaining to the ancient Egyptians comes from Greek sources. I mean, almost all the names, a lot of the interpretations of what they thought the Egyptians was talking about comes from the Greeks. And a lot of it is wrong, a lot of it's off. So we have to take that into consideration. But the Egyptians did not have a religion. So it's one of the things that's hard to get away from when you studying something that's spiritual, because we are just accustomed to saying religion, religious, or what have you. But it's a difference between, religion and way of life. Like you wouldn't call, what we do, or let's say our hip hop culture a religion. You could kind of sort of call it that, but you wouldn't call just the way people live their daily life a religion. It's what they live and what they do. The fact that it's a practice to it, they put it as a, religion, but it's what the Egyptians always done, and everything they did was intertwined into their society, which is one of the reasons why things went the way it went, because as I talked about, they wasn't allowing themselves to expand. The Egyptians wasn't tolerant of anybody, religions and what they was, doing or what have you. It was always about, remembering the past. The focus of the civilization was really on the afterlife and, so much more. But the main thing is the afterlife. So it's important because a lot of the stuff that we see, biblical religion, Islam, is coming from this, as we all know. And it's important to not get caught up in what is the understanding of the Egyptians and what they talked about in the Bible as far as the esoteric part of it. So what I mean is, when you look at the ancient Egyptian studies, it's rooted in astrology. And you look at the Bible, talk about the same thing, astrology. So talked about Adam's, the whole Adam and Eve thing, understanding that the disciples has to do with the 12 signs of the Zodiac. Jesus would represent the sun and we will represent the disciples. So the story of the Hebrews, the bull calf and all that, all of this is still coming from Egypt. It's what was going on around that time when it was putting all this information together and what they were seeing. So when you look at the temple in Dendera on the ceiling, this is the Greeks who did this. And the temple at Dendera, you have the Zodiac, Egyptian Zodiac, and it is set to the age of Pisces. But then you go back and you can look behind it and see that, you had Aries and Taurus. And I talked about how with the Hebrew Israelites, the Ark of the Covenant, when Moses came down, they was basically worshiping the bull calf, which would be the Egyptian Metu. And it was supposed to be in the age of Aries, the ram, which would represent the ram of Ammon. So we know you go throughout Egypt, you can see the rams that were out there. And that's where all this stuff comes from, the biblical stuff. We know they got it from the ram of Ammon. We understand that during this time, the whole concept of being in a certain age and doing stuff within a certain age, all that came from the ancient Egyptians, because they was in the age, you might as well say, of the ram of Ammon. And then what we have during this time is the Greeks gave us Zeus Ammon, as I showed you guys, with the ram's horn. But we also have Amenhotep and Amenophis and Tutankhamun. So the whole thing being Amen because of the ram of Ammon. I want to read here from Immortality of the Soul. It says here, there's no trace of any struggle for the victory between these systems. And it's talking about how understandings came into play, and they basically overthrew the old understandings. And sometimes they just kept, multiple understandings of the afterlife or different deities or what have you, that on the outside looking in, it would look like religions, usurping religions, but it was just them bringing more concepts into the whole, understanding. So it says each new order of thought was taken as it arose into the circle of the older ones. However heterogeneous it might be to the rest, the consequence was that in Egypt there was no religious progress in our sense of the term. But for us, it is essential that old and outworn forms of belief should be cast off. With them, a new doctrine could achieve no greater success than to win a place among the older conceptions of the Egyptian pantheon. And it says here, it seems to us at first as though the relations of the gods to the life beyond had nearly everywhere been regarded as more important than their relation to this life. But this impression is owing to the fact that our material for the study of the Egyptian religion is almost exclusively derived from tombs and funerary temples, while the number of Egyptian monuments unconnected with the cult of the dead is comparatively small. On this account, it has been supposed that both in their religion and in their public life, the Egyptians turned all their thoughts towards death and what lay beyond it. Now, the ancient Egyptians did have festivals and parties, and they played games and drank beer and stuff like that. So it wasn't, everything wasn't about death, death, death. It was just, what was truth? Like, what was this really about? They understood their purpose, the existence that they were in. And it was them trying to have the spiritual connection with, the physical, and to make sense of all that. So I talked about how consciousness expands from experience. And this is what, we got to look to when we're looking at the culture, because everything in the ancient world, we look at a lot of the ancient civilizations, it was all centered around them, worshiping the gods. And everything was about the sun, God worship, sacrifice, so on and so forth. They didn't take advantage of the planet and what was here the way that the Europeans have once they took over. And the Europeans, once they took over, they, built what we see, which gave us a better, experience in terms of expanding our consciousness. So we got to look at that and understand how that could be a spiritual thing, because as I said, physically, there's nothing we can do physically to really make a difference here. You understand? Like, we could build whatever we want to build. What is the point if it's temporary? The stuff is temporary. Something can happen and it's all gone. I doubt that whoever created us would put us here with the purpose of what? Being human. Human for what point? Human not to benefit us physically. We have to be here to benefit us spiritually. And that has to be the point, to grow in consciousness and get experience so we can grow in consciousness, so we can grow spiritually, because anything we do here as a people is limited, especially when you go back thousands of years and you understand that the civilizations and entire, millions of people were never going to know what they was here for, what they did, what they accomplished. So it's like, what would be the point of them living and being here to where it's like they never existed? The point must lie in something spiritual, which is what the Egyptians is alluding to. So we look at the Zodiac and how the Egyptians, they put it in everything. So the understanding of what the Zodiac is, astrology, the numbers, the signs, that stuff is embedded in Egyptian, the structures, the culture, language, everything is embedded within it. And talked about how the Ark of the Covenant represents the Zodiac, and what it's saying in the Bible is telling the Hebrews that, hey, this is how you're going to win.